Well, hey, hello. Welcome to Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. I'm Nathan.
I'm Ryan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. But before we get into this Tuesday's episode, I want to talk to you about our Patreon over at patreon.com/driveindoublefeaturpodcast. We have a bunch of special episodes where we talk about, off-the-cuff conversation kind of stuff, rental stores, fun games that we play. But if you want to help support the show, you can check out all the content over there for just $5 a month. But getting into this Tuesday's movie, that is Psycho 2, directed by Richard Franklin. Yes, not Psycho 1. We're skipping over Psycho 1. Everybody knows Psycho, the Alfred Hitchcock movie. We're talking about the sequel. I've wanted to talk about this one for a little bit. But I guess before we get into it, Ryan, what's your opinion on the original Psycho?
I haven't seen it.
But you've seen Psycho 2. Good. I'm glad.
No, of course. I've seen it. It's really good. I feel like I haven't seen it enough. I've seen it twice, I believe. And it's not like one where I'm like, oh my God, it's the best horror movie ever made or whatever. But it's still really good. It's shot really well. But I don't think I would classify it as like one of my all-time horror favorites.
I totally agree. I like Psycho. It's a really great movie. I watched it for the first time really late in my life, but but everybody knows like the ending twist. It's one of those movies. But no, it's a great movie. I don't even think it's one of my favorite Hitchcock movies. I think if I was to pick one, it wouldn't be that one. But it's good.
Well, since you brought that up, can I ask you what your favorite Hitchcock movie is?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I feel like I have to look at his filmography really quickly. Do you have a favorite, Ryan?
I don't know if it's necessarily my favorite, but one that I think about a lot is Rope.
Rope is a really cool movie. I like that movie.
Yeah, either that or maybe God, what was that movie called? Oh my God.
Which one?
The movie with Cary Grant, that it's like the famous one.
Oh, North by Northwest.
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
That's actually the first one that I think of is North by Northwest. Which is the complete opposite of Psycho. But it's just got all the adventure and the sights are really good. Actually, it's funny you bring up those two because I went on my Letterboxd and I put it by what I've rated the highest. And it looks like my top 3 are Rope, North by Northwest, and then the 39 Steps. And I think North by Northwest would probably be my favorite, but Rope is also a really cool movie.
Some other ones, Lady Vanishes and Shadow of a Doubt.
Yes, yeah, great. Lady Vanishes is really good. But yeah, Hitchcock, one of the greatest directors. And I think going into Psycho 2, this movie has a pretty bad stigma on it. Actually, Psycho has 3 sequels. And I think the idea of making a sequel 20 years later to a classic, especially a classic Hitchcock movie, it's going to have some people questioning it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going into this, I think you've seen this before as well, right? This wasn't my first time. What was your idea going into it? What were you thinking about it?
I don't know. At first, you automatically has that stigma attached to it, like you were saying, where I knew of the Psycho sequels, but automatically like, oh, it's probably not as good as the original or that. But I forget where I heard it, but there was some video I was watching. It might be Monster Madness, but it might, or it's something else. But it was a video where they're like, oh, it's really good. It's underrated. Like it's So I took a chance and I liked it, and then watching it again now, I actually like it a lot more than I did.
I love Psycho 2. I love this movie. I think it's a great movie.
Yeah.
It works really good as a sequel, but it also works really well as its own thing. it does a really good job with a lot of things. And I think one of the best things that it does is getting Anthony Perkins back to play Norman Bates. And I think right off the bat, Anthony Perkins really falls back into this role again really well.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is his movie.
It is, yeah.
I mean, there are other people. Vera Miles comes back, the original Lila Crane. She's a returning cast member. So it's good to see them together again on screen, but he does really well because this one starts out 22 years after the original. So he's just getting out of prison due to insanity or mental asylum. I forget, but one of the two. And he's like a totally normal guy. He just wants to live a normal life. That's all he wants.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I like about it. It makes him like sympathetic because it makes you really feel like, oh, that he actually was cured, right? Because he has a psychiatrist returning person to the show, Robert Loggia, plays this role. And it's just like they have a connection, and it really seems like Norman Bates as a character has gotten better. Just wants to go to his motel, work at a diner, and really just keep his life straight. Another returning actor, actually, Dennis Franz returns. He's the one taking care of the motel while he's gone.
I gotta say, Dennis Franz for me just like knocks it out of the park every time. Like they have him playing like the sleaziest, like nastiest characters. And he does it so well.
He really does. He plays a sleazeball so well. I personally, when whenever Dennis Franz shows up, it makes me happy. And yeah, and here he's like made like the Bates Motel like a drug den, and it also has like prostitutes. Like they just made it totally gross. And of course, Norman Bates kicks him out almost instantly.
Yeah, he's like, wait, when Norman shows up to the hotel, because it's Norman's hotel, and they were just letting Dennis Franz run it while he was away. And he's like, hey man, this is a place where they come have a good time. They come, they stay for a couple hours, then they leave.
And of course, Norman Bates, in his stuttery way, is like, get out, Dennis, or whatever that character's name is.
Tooney, I think.
Oh yeah, Tooney. I think that's what it is.
Tooney, yeah.
And I mean, right off the bat, I think so. That's one of these things. It is a movie that we did pick for Horror Month, and I don't think it's completely like overtly a horror movie, but it has horror elements. I think much like the movie we're going to cover on Thursday, it's a little slower. But right off the bat, he sees someone in the window again and stuff like that.
If it's something, I don't know. I think it's more of like a psychological horror type of movie where, because the whole time there's people that have been dying in the town, and you're kind of thinking in your head that, oh, maybe he's not as sane as he was. You know, maybe he's going back and doing his old thing. Norman Bates is back, but then I mean, after some circumstances, you're kind of trying to figure out like, is this all a red herring, or is there really something more going on behind the scenes? Yeah.
And I actually think this movie does a really good job with the mystery. I think it misdirects you quite a lot in this movie. And I think it does it all really well. Because there's a lot of plot here. Like, it's surprising the amount of plot that happens here, because this whole time, Vera Miles returns, who played Lila Crane in the first Psycho, but now she's Lila Loomis. And all she wants is Norman Bates to be locked up again, because she killed her relative, and it's, I don't know, it makes you play on that, like, okay, there's something weird going on here. Norman Bates, while working at the diner, he becomes friends with a waitress played by Meg Tilly, Academy Award nominated Meg Tilly, by the way. Yeah. And then that really comes into play. And I really like Meg Tilly in this. I actually think she does a really good job.
Yeah, she does pretty decent. I was reading like behind the scenes, though, apparently like her and Anthony Perkins did not get along at all.
Really? Oh wow.
Yeah. Like, so I I guess like on her side of the story is that she really was never allowed to watch a lot of TV and movies like growing up. So I guess she never saw Psycho. So when she got cast in this role, like apparently like Anthony Perkins was getting all this attention, like, oh, this is his big comeback. You know, he's coming to do this big role. And she was like, why is Anthony Perkins getting all this attention? and I guess that like really annoyed him. And like Anthony Perkins like actively tried to get her fired from the movie.
Oh my God.
So yeah, they didn't get along too great, but it's kind of good because they do clash towards the end of the movie.
Yeah, because it starts off they're friends, and Norman Bates is a bit weird about it, but not in like too awful of a way. He is like overly protective of her, and you can tell throughout the whole movie, and very pushy, because there's one point where she's like, oh no, I don't want to stay with you, because she doesn't have a place to stay, and Norman's very much like, no, you can stay with me. Oh, I have a free room. And she's like, no, I have someone in town. It's like, no, but you're closer to work here. And he's like a little too pushy. It's a bit creepy.
It is, but he doesn't have any, at first at least, he doesn't have any ulterior motive.
No.
He's just I think he's like kind of lonely, and then also too, he's just kind of like, oh well, this is what a normal person would do, or like,
yeah, exactly. And he talks about it. The house scares him. The house where everything went down at the end of the last movie. I think it just kind of makes him nervous being there, even to the point where he can't even handle a knife to cut his sandwiches, his toasted cheese sandwiches with milk.
He loves his toasted cheese sandwiches. They gets mentioned quite a bit
multiple times. He's like, yeah, all I have is toasted cheese sandwiches. You want some?
I mean, I wouldn't turn down a toasted cheese.
I wouldn't either. I just find it really funny, but it adds to like the character, because he almost seems like childlike in a way, because Anthony Perkins is looking really old in this role, but he has like a childlike presence, almost innocent.
Yeah, well, he hasn't grown up from that boy-like state, because his mother really sheltered him, and so he's kind of stunted in his growth a little bit. So and then he was in prison for 22 years, so
yeah,
that he does like, he doesn't have any social standing whatsoever, so he hasn't had the chance to grow any.
Yeah, and exactly.
But yeah, he's really odd, and he even tries to say like the word cutlery, and he can't even like he could barely get out. He's like cutlery.
Yeah. Which I can't believe that he's allowed to work in that diner where he cuts the lettuce for the salads and everything.
Oh, I know. I was expecting him to get her to do something or get hurt or whatever. But
yeah.
One thing too is Robert Loggia, when he drops him off at his house, at Anthony Perkins' house, so he's like, okay, you might have some episodes, but you know how to control them now. And just totally, and I'm like, is that really healthy to like make him go back to like the house where like all of his trauma is? I'm like, I don't
think so.
and then when he goes to the diner, and like even throughout the house, like he starts seeing random things. Like he starts seeing like an old woman that looks like his mother in the window. There's little notes like telling him like, don't let any women in the house, or don't let that dirty whore in the house again. And so it's like stuff like that where he thinks he's losing it, but it's the pieces start kind of coming together like later in the movie, and it's really good commentary because Anthony Perkins, he's like one of the most iconic like villains. He's Norman Bates, which everyone always thinks of, and like you said, he kind of starts out super sympathetic, and he doesn't want to be a villain anymore. He's ready to move on, but everyone's kind of like, they're just waiting for him to explode. And like that guy Toomey, he's like, you're a freak. You're gonna like, surprised you haven't killed someone already. And and then like Lila Crane's like, how could you let like a psychopath in there? And anyway, like it's kind of like which I guess getting into spoilers a little bit, he starts to lose it towards the end. So it's kind of like they forced him to like become that guy again, even though he didn't want to be that guy.
Yeah, it's really sad, actually. I find this movie so sad because it's somebody really trying so hard to move on from the past, but everybody expects him to be something, and it just kind of breaks him down because the whole, maybe not the whole town, but a certain cast of characters are really rooting against him, really leaving those notes. Or at the diner, there's a receipt that gets left that's like from his mom, and that makes him freak out. It's just like certain people are just wanting him to be psychotic, and it eventually wears him down, and he ends up going a little crazy at the end of the movie, and it's really sad, honestly. I find it to be kind of sad.
Yeah, it's because he probably could have been like a normal guy at the end of the movie, but it didn't turn out that way, and they because they start making him have these episodes. So I mean, I guess we can kind of reveal. So it's revealed that the waitress that he was becoming friends with, turns out that she's actually Lila Crane's daughter, and they've actually been planning all this long time ago, and they were trying to get Norman Bates to basically have another psychotic episode so that way he'd get locked up again. And and then eventually Mary, the waitress character, she starts like not like falling in love with him, but she's like kind of like she cares about him like emotionally, just like she kind of realizes like the pain that he's in, and he's trying to do the right thing, and so she kind of starts defying her mother a little bit and be like, no, like and like the police start to figure out like Norman Bates might be killing some people again because Toomey dies, and he's the obvious suspect, and but she starts covering for him.
Yeah, she gives him a fake alibi. I actually what I like about that character a lot is it seems like they were going for that she was kind of like Norman Bates, had like an overbearing mother, kind of forced her to do things. She even said, because Norman Bates' whole thing is that he calls her mother, and she also calls her mom mother. And at the end of the movie, you see her dressed up as Norman Bates' mother. So it's almost like full circle that this character that Norman Bates affected in the first movie, well, their daughter ended up kind of being on that same level. But I think them meeting gives them sympathy for each other, especially Meg Tilly to Norman Bates. Mary is just like really, I don't know. She's like, no, even Norman's like, I think I'm going crazy. I'm going crazy again. It's happening. And then she's like, no, you're not. Shut up. You're not going crazy again. It's not going to happen. But she eventually admits it because he definitely shows signs that a lot is going on.
Yeah. And then the final confrontation at the very end of the movie, she starts to realize that he has gone full crazy, and then she sees that her mother had died, and you're not really sure who killed Lila Crane, but so she like starts stabbing Norman Bates, and which is like a really gruesome scene because she's just like laying in like just butcher knives like right to his like shoulders and his hands, and he tries to grab the blade with his bare hands.
Yeah, that shows you how much it changed in movies in like 20 years. Because like that scene would have never happened in the original Psycho. But
can you imagine? Yeah.
Yeah, no. But yeah, like she stabs him, it goes through the hand. The worst one is when he grabs her blade and she like takes it out of his hand and like slices him. But the whole time Norman Bates is acting like nothing is wrong. He's like, no, mother, you're good. I want to listen to you. I love you, mother. She also accidentally kills Robert Loggia, which is kind of like the scene from the first one where the guy falls down the stairs, except much more brutal.
Oh yeah,
because he falls down the stairs and accidentally lands on a blade that stabs him along the way.
Right,
yeah. What a scene.
Yeah, they definitely amped up the gore in here because I mean, Dennis Franz character, when he gets murdered, he's like in a dark room and his whole face gets sliced up. So
yeah, and Lila Crane gets stabbed right through like the mouth, if I remember right, like just like straight through. Yeah, so It gets brutal. So it definitely is like 80s horror, but I don't mind it all too much.
It's we say that though, but it's not excessive.
No, exactly. I say brutal, but like compared to some movies that we might have talked about on the show, it's a lot more tame. Honestly, one of the things that's weird about me for this is it's kind of shot like a TV movie. The way it's shot is very simple. I don't know. It's hard to explain, and you can definitely tell it's shot on that old Psycho set. They just filmed it back there because it's been on the Universal backlot forever.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you mean. I didn't have any issues with the shots. One thing I sent you before we recorded this, and I don't know if you got a chance to, was there was a guy that actually color coded Psycho 2 to be a black and white movie, and it actually works really well because and how this movie starts, it starts with the iconic shower scene where Janet Leigh's character gets brutally murdered in the shower. And how it's done in this movie is that it ends with that scene and it kind of pans over into the room, and then the room starts turning into color, indicating that this is time skip or whatever. But in the video, it showed it was black and white the whole time, and it actually looks like Psycho never ended, and I think it actually looked really good, like what they could have done if they did leave it black and white.
Yeah, I did get a chance to watch that video, and I thought it was actually really cool kind of going into that. Unfortunately, I don't think in the 80s that was a big deal. Like, they weren't really going to do a black and white movie like that, but it's really nice.
No, unless you're like a filmmaker like Jim Jarmusch in the 80s or whatever.
yeah, where you have no money or anything. It's like, all right, I'll shoot on black and white.
Unfortunately, they wanted to make money with this movie.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? This movie was a successful movie. I mean, it was successful enough to spawn another sequel for theaters, and then a fourth one for TV. All with Anthony Perkins in it. So Anthony Perkins was all in.
He actually directed the third one.
Yeah, that's why I've never seen the third one, and I will have to talk about it on the show at some point.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. But no, I personally think this movie, I mean, we've given away a lot of the plot, but I do think this is a movie worth seeing. I don't know, it's just a really cool movie. I think like the stigma of, it's a sequel to Psycho and has nothing to do with Hitchcock. I take that out of your mind, and I think you'll really have a good time with it.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add, so I mean, if you look at a lot of like the reviews that came out during that time, this movie got a lot of negative reviews when it came out. Because I mean, if you look at the Rotten Tomato score, it's not very good on there.
No.
And I think this has like the same stigma like Halloween 3 has, for like Halloween 3, where it was like, everyone's like, oh, it doesn't have Michael Myers in it, this movie sucks, like I hate it. And but then if they called it anything but Halloween 3, it would be regarded as a great horror movie.
Yes.
And this one, unfortunately, because it's a sequel to a great horror movie, it has that stigma of like, how could you even make a sequel? And a lot of critics trashed this movie when it came out. And Richard Franklin is an Australian, and he has actually made like a lot of Hitchcockian type of movies before.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
So, and there's actually some other ones which I was researching, like that I'd like to see, but and I think he actually does really good. I mean, like when you have to make like a movie that people compare it to as like the ultimate, like the Citizen Kane of horror movies or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
That's a lot to do. And I think he does really good, but I would like to pose the question to you. How does it stack up to the original?
That's hard to say. As far as like importance, of course it has nothing on Psycho, right? But I find it to be, for me, just as enjoyable. I think Psycho 2 is just as enjoyable as the first one, if not a little more fun than the first one. The first one has its place as like a great movie, and it's a beautiful movie. Hitchcock really doing his best. But but Psycho 2 is just a really fun movie, and I really can appreciate an enjoyable, entertaining movie.
Yeah, it's for me. I felt the same way. It's on par with the first movie, and to me, it's like if you haven't watched it, you probably haven't given this movie a chance, and I think maybe if you don't think it's very good, I would say you might be a little biased towards the first one, maybe even. But
yeah,
I don't think it's a bad movie, and in fact, it's actually really, really great, and I like it a lot. So I definitely say check it out. It's definitely a movie worth watching, and don't let the title scare you away at all.
No, really don't let it scare you away. It is worth checking out.
And like you said, if this movie had been called anything else, like if this been called like Hotel Murder or Hotel Psychopath or something like that, like it would be totally revered. It'd be beloved.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's one of those movies that just the name scares people away, just like what you said with what was the other movie you mentioned?
Halloween 3.
Yeah, Halloween 3, which Halloween 3 is a great movie as well. If it was its own deal, it would be, people would love it. And people still debate Halloween 3. I said was one of my favorite horror movies, and I had someone debate me on social media about that. So people still to this day have stigmas about these movies. I say get rid of them. Enjoy these movies. They're worth watching.
Yeah, don't box yourself in.
Exactly. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too heavy anymore in the Psycho 2. I really just say you should see it.
If we haven't revealed all the spoilers, I'll say that. So no. And there's a lot to see there. The score, I would also like to add, is great.
Yes,
like
really good.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's made by Jerry Goldsmith. You know, he's like a really famous composer. And the original Psycho was done by Bernard Herrmann, but Jerry Goldsmith was a friend of Bernard's, and Bernard was dead at the time, and so Jerry Goldsmith was able to kind of work off what he did. And I agree, it really captures Psycho, but is its own deal, kind of like the movie itself.
Yeah, and it's actually written by Tom Holland, so I can't believe Spider-Man got to write this movie.
Well, was he just like he's probably a sperm at that point?
No, Nathan, the multiverse, dummy.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see the new Spider-Man. Gotcha. But no, that's the Tom Holland of Fright Night, who made the Fright Night movies, which I love those movies, or at least the first one I really love. So
yeah, he did Child's Play too.
Oh, wow, look at that. Perfect. So another great horror person working on this. And we'll definitely have to revisit Richard Franklin, because I didn't realize that all the movies that he made, I would love to check out, like Road Games, and one we've talked about in person before, which is Cloak and Dagger. He directed that movie.
Oh, he did that? Okay.
Yes, he did.
All right.
Yeah. So maybe one day we'll get back into his filmography.
Definitely.
Yeah. But I guess moving on from here, Ryan, what are we going to be talking about on Thursday?
Well, Nathan, let me just reach into our mailbox here. And
okay.
It looks like we have the invitation. Well, it's this little party I got going on, and it's for this movie called The Invitation.
Okay.
Ironic, yeah. What a coincidence. And this movie is free. It's on Tubi, and it's also on YouTube, so you can watch it right there, right now.
I didn't know that. Surprising. But awesome. Well, I can't wait to watch that. If you want to send us an email, be sure to email us over at driveindoublefeaturpodcast@gmail.com. Also, you can check out our Twitter at DIDFpod. But until next time.
Until next time.